must constantly look at things in a different way.
The Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast was created by two physical therapists out of the desire to learn more about the different educational roles in physical therapy and healthcare, and how healthcare education works by talking with educational leaders and people with different perspectives within physical therapy and across interdisciplinary lines on how education can be improved to disrupt the status quo of healthcare education. This is our journey, and thanks for listening. Are you a third-year physical therapy student that excels on tests when you have study guides, checklists, and deadlines? With all of the information available about how to prepare for the NPTE, it's easy to get disorganized and not feel prepared going into the big day. NPTE Prep Success is an online course that provides PT students easy-to-use study guides and step-by-step guidance through the NPTE preparation. To learn more, visit kylericeprep.com. Thank you again all for your continued support, and now for the show. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast. And, for today's episode, we're going to be taking a slightly different turn. For some of you who may not be aware, F. Scott and I actually did our own kind of self-reflection episode in which we talked about how we've transformed as people, really, since we started the HET podcast. And we did that about 6-7 months ago. Today, since we've we'd like to do it again. Except this time, since we have some awesome new team members, we'd also like to get their perspective on how they feel that they have grown and they have developed and kind of what they look to continue to learn and develop from doing the podcast. Brian Maurer, our social media manager, was unfortunately not able to join us this evening. Well, we also added another member to the team as well. So we have added Dustin Pasigli, who is not on this call this evening, because what we've been trying to do actually is kind of continue to grow the team. Because ultimately, we're going to be able to do more with more people. And because we want to be able to achieve some other things that kind of help continue to expand, not only the podcast, but again, healthcare education. And we realize we can do that more with more people so that one person doesn't have to do a lot of the other details, and then that progress is going to be slower. But I'm super excited because Dustin's going to be taking over the Libsyn and the Canva portions of the podcast, which for those who are not aware, Libsyn's basically our audio locker that whatever he puts into that goes to iTunes, and Canva is our promotional poster platform that we use. So he is going to be working on that, and actually we start training this week on that. He seems like a really good guy. He's about 3 years out. He just completed OCS. He's been doing some adjunct teaching as well. So I really had a really good conversation with him, and he strikes me as a really, really good guy who's, again, wants to contribute to making things better. So,
yeah, and Dustin's done some good work with New Grad PT as well. He actually had a really good article about a bunch of good podcasts not too long ago. So, many people should be familiar with Dustin and his work. He's been doing some really good stuff, and we're excited to add him to the team.
Especially because his mission lines up with what we want to accomplish with this podcast, and that's the most important thing.
I could not agree more. So let's just go down the line here and let's see. Scott, do you kind of want to tell us a little bit about kind of where you've been since we last did that transformational episode and kind of how you've grown since then?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to keep mine short and sweet because there's two main takeaway points that I've kind of gained while doing this podcast. And we've talked about them a bunch, but one is just network. Like I said, I tell everybody this time and time again, my network has grown probably tenfold since starting this podcast, and I could not be happier of that. I've met some amazing people. I've got to talk to some of the best experts out there in the country and beyond, internationally even, which has really opened my mind and my eyes to a lot of things that are going on in the world of healthcare. And the second thing really is a common theme that we've been seeing, and it's mainly just that physical therapy, to me, has become just the tip of the iceberg at this point. There's so many other avenues and things that we can do as physical therapists to benefit not only the world of physical therapy, but just healthcare in general and even beyond, that I'm really looking to expand and get out, outside of my own little bubble of physical therapy and try to get out there and do some things that, are just different, are kind of new and innovative, because as physical therapists, we have that ability. We have so much knowledge in so many areas that I think, it would be almost unfair of me not to use a lot of this knowledge that I've gained both from the DPT and the EDD. So I'm going to try to start pushing the envelope when it comes to healthcare and education.
I love that, man. And I really appreciate and value that take. And, just to kind of give our listeners a little bit of context too, Scott, you were working as an adjunct and stuff, right? You're doing some other stuff too, education wise. Do you mind kind of telling us kind of what you've been up to as well in that department?
Yeah. So I just finished the 4th chapter out of 5 on my dissertation, which hopefully take another month and I'll wrap that up. And I've been teaching just a little bit adjunct with Baylor University in their 2-year DPT program. And I've been actually lucky enough to teach with one of the guys that was on our podcast a couple months ago, Dr. Casey Umverzat. I'm helping him teach his movement course. So so far it's just a little bit of going in, doing some online grading and helping some of the students along. And then we meet for a lab up in Dallas in August. So I'll go up there for that movement analysis lab. So I'm dabbling, I'm trying it out. I'm seeing what academia is really all about. I'm trying to still make that decision on if it's for me or not. But, we'll see. I'm keeping my eyes open and my mind open to what could be. Not keeping anything out of the realm of possibility right now.
I really like that. I really respect that opinion and that take of really making sure you're staying open. Because I think just from meeting you, when I first met you over a year ago and seeing how you've changed already and what you've been able to achieve, it's been truly remarkable, man. So I just keep pushing that envelope forward. Steph, with you, I know you've been with us relatively recently. So from your perspective, kind of looking back on where you were before you joined HET to kind of where you're at now, what are your thoughts on kind of how you've grown or changed as a result of doing this podcast?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for being on this journey with me. It's been a very interesting one. I have always been very involved in the American Physical Therapy Association, but haven't really reached outside the APTA. And I would say that probably the biggest thing that I have learned from being a part of this podcast is that there's so many more institutions, organizations, healthcare professionals that we, kind of like Scott said, that we as physical therapists can really tap into to provide collaborative healthcare. Not just us as physical therapists trying to improve population health, wellness, preventative services, but how can we work with other healthcare professionals? How can we teach them about what we do, and how can we learn from them? So I really appreciate the fact that I've been able to reach out of my APTA comfort zone and connect with not only physical therapists outside the APTA, but also with physicians and occupational therapists and educators. The other takeaway that I've had is I've really gained a lot of insight into healthcare education. And prior to going into it, there were a lot of issues that I had with it. And by talking to all these guests, there's so many innovative solutions and there's so much hope behind what we can do in education that some of the issues that I had with it before, I don't really necessarily have anymore, because I know that we're going to solve some of these problems. Not us, but there are people out there that will solve some of these problems. And hopefully by offering this form of media, we can help institute or initiate that change. So it's just been really amazing being a part of a group, this podcast, as another way to help change our profession and healthcare for the better. That's what my mission is. How can we interact with people outside of ourselves to try to make physical therapy the best it can be and healthcare the best it can be? And this is another way that I found to be able to do that. So those are my reflections over the last, February, March, April, May, June, 4 months that I've been a part of this team.
It's been quite a journey for sure. And, it's interesting when you kind of say how you've learned a different perspective, kind of looking outside the APTA. I think I can speak for F. Scott and I and say we were kind of on the other side now, looking into the APTA more, because we have been more predominantly in more of the outside circle. So now we're trying to gain an insight onto both sides, which I think has been very enriching. And it's really kind of opened up a different side to really look at the problem a little bit differently. So I find that very, very valuable.
Yeah, it's been a great balance having you come on as a co-host, Steph. I think it really brings another point of view that I don't know that Brandon and I shared, going into it. So it's been enlightening for sure.
Well, and it's really important in healthcare to have a group of people united under one vision or mission. And the more that we can get both people in the APTA and people outside of the APTA to kind of see this collaborative vision, the more likely we are to have power within healthcare, not only when it comes to advocacy, so like in DC, doing some work there, but also just in trying to change payment models so that we can get better payment for our services, and making sure that we're reaching out to as many consumers as we possibly can. And if we can unite together, both APTA members, non-APTA members, into one collaborative organization, then we can have even that much more power. But it takes both sides listening to each other. And I think that this podcast has really given us a way to do that.
I couldn't agree more. And I definitely have, even just going through Next conference this past week, just seeing how there are already some discussions in play at that conference to try to work on different solutions to make that a reality. So I think the future is definitely bright. Well, Cole Winderman, so when you first started off, we were kind of going through editing 101 and just going through a lot of other stuff in terms of where you were looking for between PT and PA. But I'm kind of curious, do you think you could share with our listeners kind of how you feel like you've grown and how you feel like you've changed since joining the team?
Okay, so the first thing I would like to talk about is editing. In the beginning, editing was a bit overwhelming because I had to get used to the program. But, there's a learning curve in anything new that you do. I like editing because I get to listen to all the episodes before they get posted. The second thing I would like to talk about is PA. I came across it, and since I have a very curious mind, I wanted to look into PA and it's what it's all about. And I still want to do PT, but shout out to all the PAs. You guys are doing a lot of good out there, and it's a very hard-working career. Personal growth-wise, I'd like to talk about this organization that I just recently joined. It's called Magic, and it's a sports club it's a sports club for kids with disabilities. Currently, we are having sign-ups for soccer, and soccer is gonna go on till October, November-ish, and then we are going to have another sports for these kids. The last thing I'd like to talk about is networking. Networking is the reason I joined the podcast, and it's great because you get to meet so many people and make connections that are going to help you in your career.
I can definitely say from how far you've come with the editing and stuff, because editing is not an easy thing to really get down. It definitely takes some time. Honestly, it took me probably 6 to 7 months to learn what I showed you in those brief little bit of time. And I think you've definitely caught on pretty quick. And now you're doing, you've even come up with some solutions that make it faster that I hadn't thought of. So to me, I'm that's ultimate success. So I'm happy for you. It is interesting, especially when you said, you were kind of considering the PT or PA route. And, and I think how you kind of said you were wanting to do a job that kind of exposed you to both worlds to kind of make that decision for you. And I think you being able to know the ins and outs and see the real life clinical stuff and research all those details really helps you make the best decision for you. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you need to know all the outs and ins and some of this basic knowledge of these professions to really see, is that something that you really want or not?
Yeah, definitely. It was nice looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, Cole Winder, I can't thank you enough, man, for making the show sound great. I mean, I go back and listen to the episodes after we've recorded them just to kind of take some notes and stuff for myself. And, you keep doing a great job, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. And I actually can't wait to see how your career progresses and what you decide to do and the path you decide to take. So we're all pretty excited for you, man, and can't wait to see how it ends up.
Definitely.
Well, I guess comes the time now where I have to tell my transformation. So kind of where I was at the end of the first transformation things is, as I said in that one episode, I feel like my total view of healthcare education really had changed because I was definitely looking at it much more cynically before then. And I'll kind of go back to Steph's point and how she saw that, she kind of similarly felt that she didn't feel the same way about healthcare education after kind of learning and hearing this stuff that we've learned from the guests of the podcast. And I agree. I still think there are some things that we can work on and we can improve. And I think we are making strides toward that, not just us as the podcast, but I mean the profession overall. An interesting fact is that I had recently finished up teaching actually as an adjunct instructor for the local PTA program, even though I technically taught for kind of an undergrad group. So I taught anatomy to pre-nurses, pre-PTAs, pre-OTAs. And I only did that for about 3 months because I really just wanted to get some experience, and thankfully had an opportunity that ended up working out. So I was at South University in Richmond, Virginia. And honestly, I will say that the experience was definitely different than I thought it would be. I didn't realize how much work it actually is to get a course up and running, and all the prep, all the admin, and all the stuff that's involved with it. I grossly underestimated that, and I learned the hard way how much it was. I know a lot of people seem to give the academic side, like the faculty, like the higher ups, a lot of crap. And I know there's a lot of stigma on that, but I have to really be honest, from at least my perspective, teaching 2 times a week at that time, I didn't have any problem from admin whatsoever. They were very, very helpful, supportive. They allowed me to be creative, and they gave me freedom to do what I wanted to do to really help gauge the students better. So I can't say I ran into a lot of those barriers from my perspective. But the only thing I will say is that, well, to add on to that, let me say is that I've learned a couple things about myself in terms of, I've learned I don't want to teach undergrad, and I've learned I don't want to really teach anatomy just because it's an interesting topic, but it's not a subject matter that I'm super passionate about. And for me, just teaching a course that I'm not super passionate about and to the undergrad crowd, frankly, wasn't my cup of tea that I would do for a long time. So at this point, I'm still not ruling academia out, but it's definitely not going to be undergrad, and it's definitely not going to be anatomy. So in the near future, I'll re-explore that again and see if I have a different perspective. Does anyone have any other final thoughts or things going forward before I end it?
No, man, I would say if you haven't already checked out the HET Light tool, go ahead and do that. We've kind of compiled a top 5 philosophies that we've learned from doing this podcast. They go a little bit deeper into themes and topics, and that can be found at pteducator.com/HET. Give that a quick look over, and then, like I said, if you're interested in trying to find guidance and kind of take some of these experts' knowledge, go ahead and download the HET Light tool. It's pretty good guidance. It's a 52-week program where you just take one excerpt a week and kind of try to apply it to your practice. And it's something that I definitely wish I had done my first 5 years of PT career, as opposed to just going in and collecting a paycheck. I really wasted my first 5 years of my career, I think. I had other issues going on that I think I needed to resolve internally first. But, I just had no guidance and no direction. And so luckily I was able to get on the right track after a couple of years. So.
And I would like to thank everybody who has been listening to our podcast. You guys are the reason that we do this, to give you that valuable information. And if you haven't listened to our podcast yet, give it a try. Pick a topic that you think you would like to learn more about and listen to that episode. Or like Scott said, try that HET Light tool. That's a really good kind of introduction as well to what we are doing.
Indeed. I mean, we are so thankful for all the listeners, all the support, and everything that we've gotten throughout this journey, because honestly, when Scott and I first started this thing, we had no idea it was going to, honestly, I didn't think we'd be doing this past 2 months, to be honest with you. But it's been shocking how much of an impact this has already made briefly. And we're going to keep it up. We have some other big ideas we have coming up that we're excited to share in the near future as they're ready to really help contribute to advancing education forward. So if you haven't checked us out on any of our social media pages, we are also available. You can find us on Facebook at the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast. And then you can also find us on Twitter or Instagram at HET Podcast. And if you guys really have found that you really do like the content, or you feel like you've really gotten a lot out of it, please feel free to kind of give us an iTunes review, because that really does help improve our visibility within iTunes and such, because that's ultimately how we're going to be able to help more people.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to us with any ideas as far as topics you want to hear, guests you'd like to hear from. We love interacting with our listeners. So hit us up on social. We can be found just about everywhere. So thank you so much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast, as we greatly appreciate your support to help us advance healthcare education. We are very happy to announce that we have created a new tool to help develop clinicians into better experts. With that being said, we have created the HET Light tool, which LIGHT stands for Learning, integrated towards expertise. And what we've done is we've taken our first year's worth of episodes with experts in the fields of healthcare and education, and we've taken one golden nugget or theory on expertise and presented it to you in a very easily consumable format so that people can take one lesson or nugget per week and map out and plan how to incorporate it into your clinical and educational practices. And by the end of the year, we think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how far you've progressed towards becoming an expert. To find out more, please check it out at pteducator.com/HET, which is also available in our show notes. Thank you again all for your continued support. Thank you for attending class today, and we hope that you learned something and gained value from the content.
If you'd like to schedule office hours with us, feel free to add us on Twitter at HET Podcast, on Instagram, HET Podcast, on Facebook, the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast, and the homepage, healthcareeducationtransformationpodcast.com.
And for those of you following along in the syllabus, extra credit can be obtained by liking us, sharing us, and leaving a review.
Let's continue our journey up Mount Educational Success as lifelong learners.